Welcome to Morally Abhorrent. I'm Mike Ryan Ruiz. I'm joined in person by Chris Wittyngham. Good to see you, my friend. Good to have you here. That was a very weird touch that you gave to my shoulder. That was
you did the pat.
Yeah, I did pat.
You did the pat. I was high. I was in the friend zone.
We're men. We don't know how to be affectionate with each other. Hang on, Fat Boy Tug on the t-shirt. Hey, everybody. That was a pretty decent semifinal. It did not lack for excitement. And Morocco controlled the game. Not really something that any of us anticipated. But once again, and this is what I was getting at when I was trying to discuss a French game and the French performance against England in the previous round, which is they were comfortable the entire time. They conceded possession. And once again, France in full control of the game. The early goal helps. There's one performance I want to highlight, even though Mbappe dazzled once again, has just a special, unique quality, and we can talk about him a little bit later. But Antoine Griezmann, I think, has been France's most consistently excellent player this tournament, and no one in the tournament has created more chances than Antoine Griezmann, but I really want to highlight the defensive work. When France entered this tournament, they were without arguably the best defensive midfielder on the planet when he's healthy and on form in N'Golo Kante. They have him still. Antoine Griezmann's all of a sudden turned into the N'Golo Kante replacement. He is everywhere on this pitch. It is a new chapter in what is becoming an illustrious career for the player, but not one that many of us saw coming, Woody.
No, and it's the ultimate in answering the call of duty. I actually think that when you look at Hakim Ziyech's performance in this World Cup, it's very similar, which is you're kind of surprised that a player who is so renowned for his attacking abilities is doing as much defending and as much work. And yet it's very similar to Griezmann's story, where he had a very defined role in this French team. I believe he has set the record for consecutive games for France started. That he is just you plug him in every single game kind of player for France. And he plays at times the number 10 as a winger, sometimes as the center forward himself. But in this tournament, he was asked in the shape that Didier Deschamps has preferred. Aurelien Tchouameni kind of plays in the base of the midfield. And then in front of him are usually Rabiot and Griezmann. Today it was Fofana and Griezmann because Rabiot is so sick that according to the Fox broadcast, he spent the game in bed, which is, a disease that's been going through the French camp. So Griezmann, again, asked to do this job and does it so well. It creates that running lane. It wasn't a brilliant ball. I'm actually kind of disappointed between Morocco and Croatia at sort of the manner that they conceded goals that allowed them to go out of this tournament. So strong defensively, and yet I thought there were fairly basic errors that they made today, but Griezmann makes that run, pulls the defense, allows Mbappe to attract all that attention. Luka Hernandez is available on the back post and finishes with really solid technique for that first goal. But like you say, it's the covering every blade of grass quality that when you watch N'Golo Kante play for Chelsea, as you do every week as a Chelsea fan, you sort of recognize how important that is. And yeah, it might not show up in every box score, and you have to sort of know what you're looking for, but you can't help it when you watch France be sort of locked into what he's doing. Yeah. And I'm almost going to rewatch this game with that in mind. I'm going to watch Griezmann for the 90 minutes to see the work that he was doing, because you can see its value all over the pitch.
It still hasn't lost the novelty on me when I'm like, who's that tracking back? Is that Griezmann?
He's in between the two center backs defending in the area.
It was so shocking at first that I started making a habit of just locking in on his ability to track back. And he runs box to box. He's all of a sudden become this box-to-box, shutdown defensive mid with the same, even better distribution quality than we've come to see him. Griezmann was his goal poacher, really.
Yeah.
And now he was kind of an afterthought when you would look at, granted, a stellar world champion. They're defending. They're back in this final, improbably, somewhat. We'll discuss that a little bit more. But Griezmann wasn't one of the first names that you would mention when you were talking about the most recent French national world champion. And yeah, I mean, this is a guy whose star was outshined by Paul Pogba.
Yeah.
And here he is, arguably, we'll see what happens on Sunday. But if I had to vote right now, I'd give it to Messi for player of the tournament. I'd give it to Messi.
Yeah.
But I'd be really considering who I'd vote for as a French representative. When you put in the defensive work and you realize how much Griezmann is making Mbappe's life easier, being in servitude of that player, I'd say Griezmann has been France's most excellent player this tournament, and Mbappe's been stellar.
Yeah, and yet you look at the goal scoring charts, it's not even just Mbappe, it's also Olivier Giroud, who's up there, who I didn't think played very well today, and I think needed to be taking off in that second half. But it's very similar to the Messi story with France. I have a slightly controversial opinion. I don't think that Kylian Mbappe should do that much walking. And I know that I kind of praise Messi because it kind of works for him and he springs to life. But Messi also has the bona fides to have run for 11 more years than Mbappe. Mbappe is 23. Do some running, man. Yeah. When your team is as exposed as they were. And I'll be curious how Argentina look at attacking it down that right side, because the right side of their attack isn't brilliant. Nahuel Molina, their right back, is pretty good, but they don't really have that right winger when Di Maria is not fit to attack this weakness. But Morocco, it's funny because Croatia have the best midfield in the tournament, which is what allowed them to get there. And I think Morocco might have the best right wing at the tournament when you combine Achraf Hakimi getting forward from right back and Ziyech, and you saw them just overload that area over and over again because Mbappe, who is in theory the left winger, is 40 yards down that way, ready to strike on the counter, but isn't part of a defensive shape that's getting overwhelmed.
He explodes with such pace when he's on the ball, though. And he is capable. You could honestly... He had a large hand in both of those goals today,
just by attracting so much attention.
His gravitational pull. I saw this stellar photo from the Telegraph, just 4 Moroccan players in the box converging on him, and the second goal was just even more brilliant because it's just as soon as someone gets in the box, give it to Mbappe. Everyone lives in service of this player. Yeah, a lot like Messi on the national team. However, I get your point. It's like, but why? Mbappe, you're so young.
Right.
You seem to have pace for days. You'd be a menace if you decided to press.
Yeah.
With the same kind of
be
fervor.
Such a defensive asset. But I guess it sort of goes back to a point that I talked about earlier in the tournament with Clint Dempsey's first ever piece of analysis, which was Josh Sargent does too much running for an attacker. That I guess there is sort of still this old school ability for attackers to just sort of only attack. And Mbappe very much embodies that. But getting back to your point about Griezmann, you're right. It is in the overall service of this team because, in theory, you're playing Giroud, who does some defensive work, but given the athleticism of his age, is never really going to cause anybody a problem. You have
he tries his best.
Right. You have Griezmann, you have Dembele, and you have Mbappe, right? Dembele, I think, also does a lot of work at times as a right wing back, but in the attack, did not offer very much today.
Uneven tournament for him. At times, he's been really good, but today he was largely invisible. And you see the second they pull him off, his replacement comes on first touch goal.
Yeah, which I still would have to look up his name, which again just sort of goes to show that the France just have goal scorers on the bench who you don't even have to know about. Just presume that they're good. But yeah, I mean, that sort of typifies Dembele's career. He's never been that consistent of a performer. It's why his move to Barcelona hasn't really quite worked out. But the whole thing has to work as a unit. And it's why France, although maybe not now, but it was always about building a collective, and they have better players than the ones that they start. Now, most of them are hurt, but even if they weren't hurt, there would have been legitimate lineup dilemmas because, maybe Christopher Nkunku is one of the best bright young talents, but would he have done the work that Antoine Griezmann has done in this tournament? I don't think so. I think Griezmann has been fundamental.
To be fair, though, like Griezmann, I wouldn't have said that about him, though,
right?
Entering this. The real hot take would be, did the injuries force Deschamps' hand into actually putting together a more cohesive unit?
Yes.
Can you imagine what this team might look like? They probably have a little bit more goals, but they aren't really struggling in that. If you just had Benzema and Mbappe out there, I don't really know how that manifests. Do we get the same kind of Griezmann? Do we get the same kind of defensive effort from this French team that's been impressive? And you and I have been privately we've had a countdown doomsday clock to the Hugo Lloris howler.
And by the way, he had one in last year's final.
Yeah.
So I mean, it didn't matter because it beat Croatia anyway. But
it was really bad. it was really bad. It's so bad that a howler like that in a world championship winning performance would get forgotten. But no, it hasn't happened yet, and he's getting stronger as the tournament continues going on.
He's played well. Like the thing is that because we're expecting that big mistake, you sort of drop him a level in your mind because generally if you had a great goalkeeper, you would presume that he would never make a mistake. But Lloris has put in every performance that he's needed to at this tournament.
Every single French player out there I think has surpassed expectations, and they have some really remarkable talents out there. So that says a lot. Deschamps has won a World Cup as a player, has won a World Cup as manager. He's on the precipice of winning a third World Cup, a second as a manager here. Again, more fuel to the fire from my hot take earlier on that in terms of the men's national team, France has become the footballing nation of most of our lifetimes. And this championship run, and I know it's wild to say because they're defending champions, when you look at the talent that's not available to them, you cannot help but be surprised. And I know that sounds wild because when you look at this team sheet, it very much looks like a team that's deserved of a finals appearance. But when I hold it in contrast to what they could be from a sheer talent perspective, if we're just sorting by FIFA ratings, the talent that they're not fielding is overwhelming.
Yeah.
I am so excited for this final. This final is, I mean, every narrative you want to throw at it with Lionel Messi and the weight of the shirt, the weight of the pressure, this championship that his legacy to a very large degree hinges on, going up against Mbappe, and you could low-key start that dialogue about Mbappe. Imagine if Mbappe gets a second world championship this early in his career, playing at the level he's playing at. He probably needs to make a move to a tougher league in Europe, and that would inevitably be coming because look how young the player is. But if he gets a second, he all of a sudden can start making that climb to that Mount Rushmore that Pele, Maradona, Cristiano, and Messi are on. This is everything that you would dream of. The two number 10s are superstars. There is so much history on the line. This match on Sunday, the result is going to be something that really permeates every bit of soccer analysis for generations to come. It's unbelievable.
Yeah, and that's the best part of it is that, like, if you're a journalist, you can write your full story before it begins about either team, right? And you know, like the way that the game plays out will matter. If Messi has a brilliant game and they win, then you sing his hosannas and you also credit the fact that he's won his first World Cup. But like you're saying about Mbappe, you know, it's sort of the reverse Messi. Hasn't had enormous success at the club level, particularly in Europe. You win a few French domestic titles, but it's such an advantage you have over the rest of the field. He basically, in my mind, not to go full Stugatz, doesn't really have a major club kind of, you know, pedigree right now. Yeah. He is strictly someone who has come onto the scene as this incredible talent at Monaco, plays really well sometimes for PSG, and then has, you know, won a World Cup and could potentially win a second. So it would just be an insane start to a career to have won back-to-back World Cups at age 23. And you still have...
That's a hard one to get.
Right, exactly. You have your entire career ahead of you.
Yeah.
At least 2 World Cups, at least 2 Euros in the
intervening
sack
period. He'll just start sacking the hardware that'll help boost his argument. The hard one to get, the one that's eluded both Messi and Ronaldo, is the one that he's already won and is
could win
right
again.
now right there on the edge. He can see it. He can taste it. And he was a young player of the tournament the last time, and he was always earmarked for greatness.
Yeah,
he was
I mean, that goal that he scored against Argentina, or the penalty, I'm sorry, that he won against Argentina. Do you remember that? Yeah. Like, it was like a 70-yard run. I remember we were at a pub, you and I, watching that game, RIP Fido in Miami. And I was commentating a game that night because MLS was still playing their season during the World Cup, as they sometimes do. And I lost my voice because of how much I yelled watching that goal go in. Like, as a neutral, I don't care about France or Argentina, which is, I should go back and rewatch that game because they're about to play in this final. But like, that goal and that run was iconic. He had his World Cup moment on top of winning it all. France were amazing in that final. And then, you know, to your point, obviously Mbappe will be a huge part of that story, but a lot of players remain from that team. And your point about this being a remarkable footballing nation and the way that they develop players, I think the Clairefontaine, which is their national academy, will get a ton of attention on the basis of this performance because, like you say, they've got 6 guys that could play a huge role in this team out in Kimpembe. You were looking at a list before we started. I mean, there's like 6 or 7 guys that they could be playing, but their reserves are good. Their reserves are good. Today, they had an illness issue with both Rabiot, you stick in Fofana, with Upamecano, you stick in Konate, who I thought was tremendous in this game. Good. He was great.
Earning a lot of my respect.
And even behind Konate, there's William Saliba, who's been really good this season for Arsenal. Like, the depth of this, like it just doesn't matter who's hurt. They've got a great team. It's a similar story as people talk about with Brazil, where it's like, oh, if you built a team out of Brazil reserves, I mean, you could probably build 4 French teams that can get to a World Cup round of 16. It's just insane, the talent that they have. And you know. And honestly, it was one of the points I wanted to bring up about Griezmann, where because he had fallen off at club level to such a degree, I imagine French fans are probably wondering, well, do we have someone in the pipeline who might be better than Griezmann? Like, you just you just assume that someone that would supplant a player who's struggling in Europe, it can never be that far away.
Yeah. Well, when I was looking at this tournament, I was trying to predict who would make the final. I didn't have France in there because of how crucial that midfield has been to their international success. How are they going to find a way to replace Conte and Pogba? And Pogba is a player that plays better for his national team than he has for quite a long time in his club career. And I was struggling to find whether or not their young players, really talented midfielders, can come in and fill that void. I had no idea it would be Griezmann. I had zero idea it would be Antoine Griezmann who would be answering the bell in terms of being somebody that could go box to box and make life easier for his forwards. And a tale of 2 different World Cups for Giroud, who's still in contention for the Golden Boot in this tournament after being the goalless striker in the last one. Really cool French national team that over the last 20 years, it's just a bonkers story. You have all these world championships. You have these finals appearances because they made a finals appearance in 2006. You have the headbutt. You have the blackmailing sex tape scandal that sees Karim Benzema, the reigning best player in the world, blacklisted from his international team, makes his way back in. They win a World Cup. They fall short at the Euros. And here they are again when not nearly as talented of a side, even though they got loads of talent that we all thought they might have entering this tournament, and it doesn't matter. What a manager, what a program they have over there, what talent, and Messi has to go through them. This is the ultimate in sports because Messi had to survive the biggest upset in World Cup history, had the galvanizing goal against Mexico, has put on epic performance after epic performance since then, has shushed the critics somewhat when it comes to the Pens, confidently taking it. And Argentina is good, and their fans feel good because ultimately they have that guy. The classic quarterfinal against the Dutch. All of this stuff is just wonderful leading up to what could be his crowning achievement in soccer, and he has to go through the world champion. And Kylian Mbappe, to borrow from a cliche from Dan Le Batard, is coming for all of his stuff.
Yeah.
It is the height. It is something that could only be provided at this stage at the World Cup. Yes, Mbappe and Messi, they play on the same team, and they'll run into great adversaries in club football. But when you have the added pressure of your nation's hopes and dreams hinging on you, it's so hard to win this trophy. There's just nothing like it, and I cannot wait to break down this game with you and soak in that atmosphere at Old Dubliner on Sunday.
Yeah, 10 o'clock kickoff on Sunday. We'll be there. And again, it's just sort of the narrative is so strong going into this game because it does sort of feel like this has been Messi's World Cup to date. I don't know how much of that is like the coverage in my head all the time. And, you know, it's funny because we think that we watch Fox or Telemundo and they're making it all about Messi, but you hear the same thing about like, you know, the English coverage. It's all they talk about is Messi. But it's sort of because he's deserved it at this World Cup. Normally, when Argentina have progressed in major tournaments before, Messi hasn't always been amazing. I remember in 2014, I didn't think he was exceptional in that World Cup, and they still got to the final one way or another. They ended up losing in extra time, and that chance that Gonzalo...
He won player of the tournament.
Yeah, but like... It wasn't a vintage Messi performance. It wasn't him at his height. It was sort of us trying to convince himself that it was him at his height. But this is him performing at his very best. And it just feels like this all ends with Messi winning it. And yet, because this French team is such a machine and they have defied odds both in terms of injury, in terms of longevity, you normally do not see longevity at international level. The most recent example was Spain winning the 2010 World Cup, winning the Euros in 2012, and it seemed like they were heading for they're going to dominate this thing forever. Yeah. And then they didn't. Yeah. And they've fallen on something resembling hard times for them in recent times.
Kudos to Russia's sports science department.
Even in 2014, they weren't spectacular either. Although, by the way, that could have been the 2009 Confederations Cup title mixed in there. But we all know what happened there.
Biggie saw his motherfucking wall.
But yeah, so I like you don't see this. You don't see national teams have eras, have sustained success. The more common theme that honestly was something that we talked about before the World Cup started with was, are they going to get out of the group stage? Because 4 out of the last 5 World Cup winners did not get out of the group stage, which is incredible. And yet France have defied all of that, and they're just a damn good team. I watch them sometimes, and I wonder if they could be better, which is funny because they've gotten to back-to-back World Cup finals. But I'm just like, man, there's more here. There's more than we're seeing.
There's a couple of oddities in this World Cup. Both these teams in this final lost in the group stage.
Yeah.
And
fairly surprisingly.
And they're the only two teams who have beaten Australia.
Right. To Tunisia and Saudi Arabia. Those are the defeats for the 2 World Cup finalists.
If you were looking at their matches in the group stages, they lost to the most unlikely of opponents within their group. We're in a scenario here where Australia could legitimately be the 3rd best team in the world, and we'd never know it because they just got mowed down by the 2 teams in the final. It's kind of random. By the way, in 2006, Australia, the only previous time that they made it to the knockout stages, they lost to the eventual champion. A classic game against Italy where Totti did the thumb-sucking celebration. So if you're Australia, transitive property, you're feeling quite good about yourself.
You're playing in the 3rd place game, not Morocco and Croatia.
Even though a lot of you are muting Martin Tyler from what I'm reading on Twitter. He's one of the legends. Have some respect. You're Australia. You got Martin Tyler calling in your games. Relax. And you don't need a soundtrack to this game. In fact, Fox did a pretty cool thing yesterday when they just laid out and let the songs of the Argentinian supporters carry you for a couple of minutes. I may not recall a word that said, unless it's Andres Cantor, then I'll certainly know one of the words that said in that game. If we even see it, how do you think these teams approach this game on Sunday? Because their semifinal performances were a little surprising. Both won comfortably. Morocco, I don't know how reflective of the actual battle that was that they gave them, but still a combined score of 5-0, relatively easy. Not a great semifinal round. They both kind of conceded possession a bit more than we thought, and their opposition looked more comfortable in the attack than we thought because Morocco and Croatia have this identity. In this final, are both these teams just going to kind of lay back and see what kind of counterpunch they can provide given their recent success with it? Because that was, even though they're all the talent, I'm not going to call them an anti-football team. This is not Greece, but they did have some more defensive-minded tactics against England and here against Morocco, and they're kind of finding their defensive identity as this counter-attacking side, and I can't think of a better counter-attacking weapon than Kylian Mbappe.
Yeah, and that, that late goal to Mbappe is always on for France. Like, to go and add to their lead, it just feels like it's always there. I'm kind of surprised it didn't come that way. The second today came from a brilliant bit of midfield play with Tchouameni and with Fofana working their way into space. And then Thuram, who came off the bench, setting up Mbappe, and his strike resulting in, again, the movement in the area that, you attract the attention and deflections can go anywhere. And I think that was sort of the tactic for them. But to answer your question, if you made me guess which team is going to have more of the ball, I think it'll be Argentina. I think over the course of the tournament, they have been, as they would say in South America, the protagonista, like the team that's taking the game and the ball to the other team, but they'll do so in a very controlled way. I think it'll be, cagey. They'll say, on the broadcast, it'll be like these two teams feeling each other out early in a boxing match. It's a lot of jabs. I imagine we'll see a lot of jabs early. And if there is a goal in the first half, then it completely changed the dynamic of the game. I would say World Cups are, yes, goals change games. That is the cliche. But compared to club football, it's so different when it's 0-0 than it is in club football, because it just seems like both teams, by the very nature of the fact that these are small samples, either a 3-game group stage or a single elimination match, like they just don't want to give up the first goal. But then once it does go in, then it completely changes the dynamic. The one thing for me, if I'm looking ahead to this game, is how do you attack the side that Mbappe is on? And again, I don't think Argentina have a ton of strength there, but maybe Messi will find it to where, he drifts. He takes up position almost wherever he feels like it. Yeah. I wonder if where you place the position for him is right in behind Mbappe and say, let's overwhelm the side that Luka Hernandez is on and try and attack them that way.
Di Maria of a couple of years ago would be a key to breaking them down, but I don't think that player has that quality in him. We'll see if if they turn to him. For me, I'm kind of trying to figure out how you defend Mbappe. We saw how Morocco did it, and yeah, they kept Mbappe off the score sheet, but he was so responsible for the 2 goals. So he's an absolute menace. And you look at that back line, there aren't these all-world defenders. It's really just a makeshift back line. Otamendi, we were laughing. He's a player that you probably trust the most back there. You got to have a back 5 back there and just try your best to keep Mbappe in front of you. I like the edge that Argentina has in the goalkeeping department, even though Lloris has been pretty good. Both these keepers enter in a pretty good run of form. I'm struggling to see how they can keep Mbappe quiet, as my dog's about to lose her shit. But you realize it's UPS. They have to ring the doorbell during the holiday season, by the way.
Do they really?
Yeah, if you're watching on YouTube now, you'll notice that maybe some of you have kids and they're delivering lots of stuff because it's a holiday season. They almost have to ring the doorbell now because there's all these gift thefts from your doorstep.
And like your ring just went off, so presumably it's a way of signifying on video that yes, indeed, the package was delivered.
Yeah,
but Roma is still ready to go.
She's ready to pounce. That's a guard dog there. I'm happy that you guys got to see her. It was really testy when Amin was here, by the way. You can cut the tension with a knife.
That's not a knife.
But she's featured in here. Carry on about how Mbappe is going to be defended by this Argentinian team, because I really struggle to find out how they can execute the game plan. I'm sure what the game plan is going to be, but can Otamendi and company actually execute it?
You mentioned changing shape. That was one of the interesting things that Morocco did before this game, is they moved to a back 5, but it didn't really work. England didn't, and they managed to keep Mbappe relatively in check, but they lost the game. So, I think with Morocco, it was interesting today for them to try and identify the ways to slow down Mbappe and to slow down this French attack. But ultimately, I thought they played better when they just sort of went about the game as they have the whole tournament. And I think Argentina is going to have to do the same thing. I know that it is really tempting. And I remember the conversation in England for the 4 days before their match against France was, how do we change to adjust to Mbappe? I just don't think you can. I think you have to go about and play the way that you believe in. The one thing that we have seen, though, from Scaloni, the manager for Argentina, is he doesn't mind making changes. Like, he doesn't mind making 3 or 4 changes, changing the system, and, trust himself to make the right ones. But I don't know. My temptation would be to go unchanged, play the game exactly as you did, but that might have worked for Croatia and trying to slow down their midfield, and maybe against France, your goal is to slow down in wide areas. So I don't know. I'm really fascinated to see what the lineups look like, though, come 8:30, 8:45 on Sunday morning, because they will play a huge role in the game. Should we have a word, though, on Morocco?
Yeah, I want to do the post-mortem there, but I think in turn, I just want to seize on one of the things that you're saying. England kind of showed that this back line of France is capable of having some pretty boneheaded plays.
Yeah.
You have a lot of injuries, a lot of people that are still getting comfortable in that shirt. You have a goalkeeper that we've both noted is capable of a howler or two and has displayed that in a World Cup final previously. I don't think it's much more complicated than what they've done all tournament long, which is Messi, go. So, like, just be special. Go, get in that box, wreck as much havoc as you possibly can. See if you can get someone's foot dragging behind, and see if you can draw a pen, because that England performance I thought was a little concerning, because I felt like France was pretty comfortable, and the only reason England was in it, and people want to talk about the chances that Saka created in that second half in particular. I didn't think he was very good in that first half, but the damage came from boneheaded defensive plays. So that's really the only possible way that I can see them getting somewhere against France and Mbappe is outscore them. I would be really surprised if they turn in a defensive performance for the ages, completely shut out Mbappe from having chances, because he's going to have his chances. Hopefully those chances fall at the feet of Olivier Giroud, who's not been the most efficient player for them, even though he's got a good goal-scoring record, certainly compared to the most recent World Cup he's played in. But it's a single game sample size. You have a player that's as informed as anybody in the planet right now, and he knows what's on the line for his legacy, and he's risen to every occasion. So we know what the attack is going to be for Argentina. The problem for them is they have someone almost nearly as good in Kylian Mbappe, and when all the dust settles on his career, maybe actually better. If anybody in active soccer right now can get himself to that pantheon, it might be this player, Kylian Mbappe. So now let's go on to our postmortem for Morocco, a worthy semifinalist, a team that really impressed. Entering this match, they'd only surrendered an own goal to Canada of all teams. I think a lot of players on this team made themselves some money. However, one thing I've never seen before in my entire life has been players removed from the lineup after the anthems. I had never seen that once. I've seen it twice this tournament, and it's been the same team in Morocco.
Do we know if it was after the anthems? We know if it was after they announced lineups, but yeah, it was twice where the announcers were caught off guard during the game. Who is this player that's out there?
Never seen that
before.
before.
Who is he in for?
That's something that I watch on Today at like 11 o'clock at night. Like that is just not something that you see at this level in soccer. And they've done it twice.
I once did a CAF World Cup qualifier for beIN Sports, and I got handed a lineup that had 10 players on it. So I'm familiar with this. But yeah, it's surprising for it to happen in a World Cup, especially a World Cup semifinal where everyone's going, "Who is this player that's on the pitch?" So a bit of shithousery there from the Moroccans, as they did with Bono in the group stage, where it was surprisingly not him in goal.
Did we ever get an answer as to why that happened?
I'd have to go on Google.
Did he have the shits? Like what?
I never found an answer to that because he hasn't. It didn't seem like he had an injury before or since.
Well, it stopped being a storyline because everyone noticed about 60 minutes into the match,
and Morocco's had such a good
well in hand.
Yeah, Morocco's had such a good World Cup. Yeah, I mean the defensive part of it was huge. To me, the thing that stuck out about today is I think there's some players with some genuine quality in that team. And you admire the fact that Roman Saiz gave it a go. But as Duncan Alexander pointed out on Twitter, when you get beat for pace by Olivier Giroud, you might be injured.
Yeah.
and he was. And a lot of Moroccan defenders gave it a go in this game when I think they have given absolutely everything to this World Cup. What a cool story for them as a country to have played basically the three countries that colonized you, and you beat two of them, and unfortunately can't beat the third.
The revenge tour was a smashing success,
right? And the crowds. There was reports today on Twitter that they're expecting 68,000 in for this game, 60,000 of whom would be Moroccan fans. We talk about the Argentina atmospheres that they've created. Morocco have created theirs and then some. So cool. And it was funny because
it was hugely important that France got on the scoreboard quickly, I thought.
Yeah, because it was funny because the announcers were talking about how loud it was in the stadium, and I guess they didn't have the effects feed dialed up loud enough because on our television, it didn't sound that loud, but to the people in the stadium, it seemed like an absolutely incredible atmosphere, and Morocco created it. And again, like I said earlier, I'm bummed that they conceded some pretty easy ones. And I think the moments in the game that they had to dominate, particularly first 15 minutes of the second half, I think they're going to kind of lament two of the chances that they didn't put away because they recognized, let's go down the side that Mbappe is on, let's overload it. And they were getting cross after cross. Ziyech was picking these little passes to find the spaces in behind. And it was such a good attacking game plan in that first bit of the second half. But then France make the change. They put Thuram out there. They put Mbappe up top. And that was sort of the end of Morocco's ability to attack. That overhead kick that almost went in before halftime.
That was a save.
Wow. It was, by the way. You love to give credit to the goalkeepers. Hugo Lloris deserves credit for that. It always looked like it went off the post. It did not. It was a save. Would have been an overhead kick for the generations if that one goes in.
Oh, it was a pacey ball too. If that wasn't so near to the post, it would have gotten past the Hugo Lloris's wrist, but he got just enough on it to push it and have that post aid him. I want to say on the first goal a little bit as we continue talking about the performance as a whole. Again, worthy semifinalists was. It's got to be so frustrating. They're going to be beating themselves up because that was such a dumb goal to concede so early on. I understand Mbappe is the big threat, but you need to have a defender with eyes on Hernandez in that spot. Goalkeeper comes out, exposes near post, and then the backline defender, who's supposed to be the last line of defense, is in the goal. Like he runs past his mark, so he's out of position to even clear something off the line. And he wasn't even that position because the goalie comes out, doesn't get the near post. That's where the defender's supposed to run to sweep something away. Not only is he not near post, he's in the goal. It was just a calamity of errors, one after another there, that just compounded the initial mistake early on. They gave France an easy one. That team does not need an easy one. I would have loved to have seen what shape this game took if they survived that. France is a better side, but that doesn't necessarily mean you go through to the World Cup final. The recipe was there. You essentially had a host nation crowd. You had a defense that was organized and playing really well. You gave them one moment, and it was the worst thing. You gave it to them early on because then it takes you out of your game. I thought they grew into the game nicely, had nice control of the ball. I was impressed with how their attack looked. They had their chances. They couldn't put them away, but that is not their team DNA. That one mistake killed them.
Yeah, and it's, again, like you said early, and it's just too easy. Even the through ball in behind to Griezmann is too easy. Mm-hmm. And everyone collapsing on Mbappe, I mean, you get it, right? He is such a threat, and that is, what ultimately is his magnetic forces. He's going to create those moments, but I could also criticize that they changed shape right before the game, and it's weak side where they get beat because Hernandez theoretically could run into the space that will be occupied by a wingback. Teo Hernandez has got ludicrous pace to get him behind.
He's had a really good tournament.
Yeah, and you have to give him credit for being in that position and also having the composure to finish. You can take it off the chest. You can take a first touch. Instead, he just unleashes it into the back of the net. And yeah, it was just one of those moments where, similar to, Croatia yesterday, by the way, a lot of conversation about the referees in the 24 hours since the end of yesterday's game that has been unbelievably tedious from Croatia, including their complaining that there should have been a corner right before Croatia or Argentina won a corner, which led to the goal. Like, it was like a minute before, and they're complaining about this when, like, ultimately, when you get beat by a simple ball over the top, you can't complain about the decisions that happened before it. Just as I think Morocco would be really disappointed. And if they had all their defenders fit, maybe they handle everything normally. But they were trying to overcome today the fact that their captain was basically unfit to play. He tried to play 20 minutes. He shouldn't have. But you give him all credit for trying to gut it out in the World Cup semifinal. But Morocco had this identity, and we knew that it was dependent on them being 0-0 at halftime, or at the very least keeping the 0 by halftime. And they didn't. And ultimately, it opened the game up, and Morocco, fair play. One of the things that I love about watching African football is a lot of players in Africa have audacity. It's like, and you see things in a game that you don't normally see. And I think Morocco is very similar. You see midfielders doing 360 turns in front of some of the best players in the world, and the audacity to play through balls and try ideas. And I really liked the way that Morocco went about trying to attack. You can see they were expressing their personalities despite the size of the moment. So I loved everything about this Morocco tournament, but ultimately it kind of comes to a crashing end. And it's disappointing that record of them having only conceded the one own goal, it wasn't like a 30-yard screamer that erased it. It was a fairly straightforward lack of defending.
Yeah, it's a bummer, but they go in the books as the greatest African nation to ever compete in the World Cup tournament. And when you were just looking at the team sheets of the African nations, they had Ziyech, they had Hakimi, players of repute, but from a talent perspective, not even top three in terms of talent. From the African sides. They were spectacular. And credit to Samuel Eto'o, by the way, who had Morocco in the World Cup final, and they just end up one game short. It's not an embarrassing prediction at the end of it. We're going to try to do one thing that we haven't done before, really, and that's take your questions. And I know there have been a couple of questions posed to us there and a couple of takes, and usually the YouTube comments section is a tire fire, and I'm going to live to regret this. But we do want to take some of your questions here in advance of Sunday's great epic World Cup final that we're all just eagerly anticipating between Argentina and France. So get those questions ready. You could have such great takeaways as Frank Rod had, which was Mbappe was trash today, which is, I disagree. I would love to see you with the ball at your feet trying to make that run across the baseline and create the goals and have that gravitational pull. I don't think he was trash. I think that's a bit harsh. I'd fall along lines of Jacques, who said Mbappe was good despite the fact that he didn't score today. He was still present. Yeah. Ask Morocco if they were aware if Kylian Mbappe was on the pitch today, and you could see in that first goal. There's been so many great photographs being taken. I shouted out the one from the Telegraph. Messi had my other favorite shot, the overhead shot of him breaking down 3 Australians, and they should just do a photo montage heading into this World Cup final and make it. They're going to try to hype this up to Mbappe versus Messi. And usually I rebel against that. I kind of think that's fair here because of the level that these players are playing at.
Yeah, as somebody put in our comments, the best player in the world versus the best player of all time. I mean, it's not a bad shout.
Yeah.
It's not a bad shout considering what Mbappe standing in the game is. It's just sort of weird how incomplete it is. Just because of my lack of perception of Paris Saint-Germain. Like I just think that they've mostly been a basket case, and at times Mbappe has contributed to the fact that they are a basket case.
Moneyline parlay killers, PSG have been, because they'll just sleepwalk through an entire game.
Yeah, but you're right. It's ultimately the easiest commercial to do. Mbappe in France versus Argentina and Messi. But I think that's going to be an easy one. I do want to mention something that somebody remembered that we posted on Twitter about a week ago. We got sent. There's this parlay. It's this moving parlay. One of the ones that you do where it's
the progressive parlays.
Yeah, the progressive parlays where
love those.
Had Kansas to win the national title in basketball, and oddly enough, LAFC to win MLS Cup, Milan to win Serie A. There was six. There's 6 legs.
I still have an open parlay from when Eric Carlson was an Ottawa Senator. And I just haven't figured out how to close it.
So it's a 7-leg progressive parlay. And it's teams to win titles. And the last one is France to win the World Cup. And we talked about this. They offered a cash-out option of $83,000 before the quarterfinal. And we were debating in the office whether or not he should let that ride. I was in favor of letting it ride. I think now he's got to place a $200,000 money line bet on Argentina. I hope that this person has let it ride.
Let's see what the line is according to our friends at DraftKings, because there's an opportunity here for plus juice either way.
Yeah, it feels like one team is plus 150 and the other team is plus 190.
Yeah, I would make France a slight favorite. I would imagine draws right there.
Yeah, so the odds for the game are Argentina plus 185, France plus 175, draw plus 205. As far as soccer goes, that is as far as a pick'em as you'll ever see. Yeah. That's a pick'em.
It's going to come down to moments, individual moments, and both teams have players that can give you that match-winning quality. So which star is going to deliver it? And both of them have so far this tournament. Let's go to the other comment section real quick, Witty, because there's some new ones coming in here, and seeing if we can get a good one, which again is not all likely because I hate that. Let's go to Pete Drummond's question. Will Di Maria play and be much of a force for Argentina in the final? It's a good question because I do think that his service provides something that could exploit some of the air quotes weaknesses that France has that you highlighted. But he didn't really feature outside of a late sub for PKs in this tournament. It doesn't really seem like he's been in the plans. However, I don't really have a read on what this manager is going to decide to do here. Di Maria is a big game player. I thought he was one of the best players in a Champions League final where he was absolutely stellar. He's just not the same player anymore. And considering their most recent performances without him, while he does provide something, I'd hold that. I'd have that bullet in the chamber, seeing what kind of shape the game takes, knowing that you can bring on a player, maybe run around the last 20 minutes if you're trying to chase a goal. They also have another player in Dybala who's really gifted in the attacking sense, doesn't really offer much defensively. And
which is why he's not playing.
Yeah, it's why he's not playing. But you have a weapon available on your bench that you could bring in. I'd be really surprised ultimately if those two bigger names that football fans are familiar with would be in the starting 11, because this manager's favoring players like McAllister.
Yeah,
and he's favoring Brighton players.
Yeah, and the interesting thing is I went back and looked at the Saudi Arabia game, which, by the way, as it relates to Pete's question, Di Maria started every game in the group stage, but he hasn't started a game since. He's been carrying an injury. And if he doesn't even get off the bench in the last game, you wouldn't expect that he wouldn't play anything more than 15 minutes. Although, I don't even know, unless the game is in a certain place, I don't even know if you can say, well, I'm going to play Di Maria 15 minutes, because you could have extra time. So you could have a 45-minute appearance for Di Maria, and if he's not 45 minutes fit, then you can't put him out there until it's extra time. So maybe
the odds are kind of suggesting that's where this one's headed.
Right. Which, by the way, to win the cup, which is their line for who's going to win the World Cup, it's Argentina minus 110, France minus 115. So
Jeez,
again,
a pick 'em.
like that is as even as soccer odds get. But I want to make this point because in the Saudi Arabia match, which they lost, they actually brought on 2 defenders in that period while the game was sort of getting away from them. And they brought on Julian Alvarez, who had yet to become the regular starter, and Enzo Fernandez, who had yet to become the regular starter, which on the basis of how he played in that game and in other games has since gone on to become regular players. So there isn't even a ton of evidence in that game when they're chasing a goal how they're going to approach it because 2 players are starting and 2 players are defenders.
Yeah. Zach Ament in our comment section is highlighting something that we haven't referenced yet, and that while we're doing the post-mortem on teams like Croatia and Morocco, they have to play what is arguably the worst game in football on Saturday, the 3rd place game. However, I do think that this is an interesting opportunity for Morocco to further cement their status. They're essentially de facto host nation here. Be really cool to see an African team place top 3 at this tournament. You're asking, Zach, whether or not Croatia will take the opportunity to have this as a send-off for Luka Modric. Please stop having Luka Modric play soccer. Just give him a break. Stop. As a Chelsea supporter, I do not want to see Kovacic out there. Give everybody a break. Have you seen enough? I have. Like, come on.
I think last year's game featured like 10 changes from both teams. So maybe we'll see that. But honestly, it's not a bad point. Like, it's not a bad point that, like, finishing 3rd and having this World Cup remembered as either Morocco or Croatia, like, you will say that going forward. If we talk about at the next World Cup and these 2 teams are in it, which presumably they will because it's a 48-team field, but you know, we'll say Morocco finished 3rd at the last World Cup, and that is an enormous achievement. Like,
it's shocking every time I go back into the wiki pages and I see like highest previous finish. You're not going to eclipse it if you're Croatia. You've already eclipsed it if you're Morocco. How cool will that be? Future generations from now, Morocco finished 3rd at a World Cup.
I mean, it's sort of, the least interesting game for the history books.
Yeah, we will not be live following the 3rd place game. But I'm gonna just carry on living my own life. I will not be watching that. I won't even watch it.
Although, by the way, one of our degenerate friends has pointed out that I believe every 3rd place game, bar the last one, has gone over. Minimum 3 goals in the 3rd place game. So
I'm definitely going to have the DraftKings fantasy game there. I'm just not going to watch it. I mean,
DraftKings fantasy game and put the over. Should we recommend that as a DraftKings bet for the 3rd place game?
Our DraftKings bet. We're going to completely bypass the World Cup final and, like true sickos, we're only betting the 3rd place game.
Over 2.5 goals, minus 115.
That is our only bet. Our only bet for this weekend is over in the 3rd place game, and now I'm watching it. Now
gambling again.
I'm gambling again. I'm invested again. Man, I really got to get familiar with the rotational players for Morocco. Have you noticed how much I've said Hakimi and Ziyech? I can only say it so much. I've got Bono and maybe like 2 other players that I'm tapped.
Who's the player that we get back from yellow card suspension for the 3rd?
Yes. Yes. Start Shadira.
Yes.
Start Shadira. Okay, so me and my friends, we have something called the Mike Vrabel cam. It dates back to Mike Vrabel's last dates. I think I've shared this on the main show a couple of times. Basically, if a player is in really bad form, stinky and not a glamour position,
but it was like Vrabel with the Chiefs.
It was
right?
Vrabel with
like
the Chiefs. It was when he was watched.
Yeah.
Mike Vrabel was this is not an indictment on him. It's just an indictment on his final year, where he was just lost out there. Great coach, tremendous player, even a great tight end when they put him on the other side of the ball. No offense to you, but ever since that final season of his, anytime a player is having a nightmare, me and my friends dub it the Vrabel cam, where we're locked in. It has since been renamed in honor of Walid Shadira, who it's going to be like, it's just, we're on one name basis. It's like Madonna. Shadira cam. He had a performance for the ages that robbed maybe that was the key to the game. No Shadira, no victory for Morocco.
I was sad. I looked at you at one point in the second half and said, oh, they don't have Shadira to bring on.
You were in a hellhole of a weekend. You had some of the worst days of your life, and the only thing pulling you through was that Shadira performance against Portugal. Shadira, you are an icon.
Yes.
And if you're starting in that 3rd place game, I will stand all 90 minutes, my friend.
And you'll captain him in FIFARMO.
Oh, my God. You're getting a captain in the DraftKings. You are a god amongst men. Shadira, you are my king. Oh, man, this has been fun doing this, and we're going to get out in front of the people. We're going to reach out and touch you. Although, considering the health of my host right now, don't touch me. Don't talk to me. Don't spit in my eye. So much spit in my eye. But we'll be out at Old Dubliner. That's different from where we did these previously. We did them at Bottled Blonde. We appreciate all of them. We can't afford a table. That place is so hot, so sexy, so expensive. We can't be out there. We thank them for their hospitality. We're going to go to Old Dubliner, a great Irish tavern that local Chelsea fans know. That's a local Chelsea hang. It's right across the street from the courthouse. Ride the train. Don't drive.
Yes.
It's right by the train stop, right by that main government center train stop. If you're down here local, get there early. It is a more compact place. It is a really great soccer atmosphere. I was out there for the England-French team, French national team game, and that was as electric of an atmosphere as I've been around this World Cup, and I've been around some tremendous atmospheres. So we're hoping to bring some of that energy. I have very good memories at that building. Chelsea won a Champions League over there. You were crestfallen there a couple of times. So I can't wait to do that with you, Witty. Get out there and be surrounded by the people. There'll be no shortage of drama on Sunday. It's going to be breathless.
Messi against Mbappe.
Every time the ball is at their feet,
yeah,
you're going to be thinking, is this the moment? It's one of those games that you cannot be on your phone for a single second, because these players can change that game and change the course of soccer history like that. It's going to be the best. I can't wait for it. Thank you guys for supporting us and supporting Witty. I know you've had very kind words shared via social media. We love you, bud. We get to see you back in the studio tomorrow. Excited to be doing Sunday's show with you. Thank you guys for watching on YouTube, being active in the comment section, and the Dan Le Batard listeners that have given us a shot here on the post games. We've got one more to go. That is, unless Shadira has a hat trick in the third place game, and then we'll be with you there. We'll
emergency
live.
Morally Abhorrent.
Yeah, emergency morally abhorrent.
I don't even know what time does that game kick off? I don't even know. It's also a 10 o'clock kickoff.
Yes.
All right.
Yeah, Shadira time. Signing off. We leave you with one thought, and that is start Shadira. For the love of God,
what's his
Morocco.
prop? What's his prop to score on DraftKings?
What's his prop to get a red card in the first 10 minutes? Dude,
they haven't put out the goal scorer prop.
Shadira has turned to thuggery. He's turned to the street stuff. All right,
man.
We love you. We'll see you at Old Dubliner on Sunday. Thank you for watching.